guys, just to the left of the tunnel we're about to enter, you can see the triangular section of open area with the eyes in front of it. That was originally called a mud mine. In fact, it wasn't a mine, it was a place where they used to have their brakes, the miners used to have their brakes. But back in World War II, when the mining excavation, because we obviously have to keep checks on all the mines, when they actually lifted some of the rock, there was unfortunately, the remains of a lady. She was wearing 1930s clothing, and because of local folklore, it's been renamed Murder Mine. Okay, this is, as I say, it's a much more modern tunnel and a much more modern construction. However, the calcite is fairly white, so what we do now is the rocks above us are fairly clear of minerals. There's a shotcrete put over the top of the concrete sections, but we'll have to see this in more detail a little bit later on. You see the stalactites above you, some of those are actually straw stalactites, which is quite unusual, and that simply means there's a hole in the middle for the water to run through. Normally the stalactites are like a triangular shape and the water runs down the outside. Now you think, as this was built in 1989, they might make it straight. However, they obviously weren't thinking of boaters when they did that. But actually, if you look above, you can see right at the top, you can see it's like an archway. And that was actually a natural fault in the rock. So when they decided to build this out, they decided to follow the natural fault, because it's easier to dig out, easier to mine. As we go through, the rock formations will change and the brickwork will change. I'll explain that as we go a little bit. What I am going to do now, I need to get your eyes accustomed to the dark, so I am going to turn the lights off. So don't be afraid, your eyes will soon adjust. Okay, we've just got a section there that's lit with the red light. And the reason for that, as I say, we followed a natural fault here, and what they had to do, they put basically great big steel girders, in fact like a large spring there, just to make sure that everything's nice and safe and secure. Now we're just about to enter the first of the caverns I'm going to show today. Its name is Little Tess. Now Little Tess actually has a bit of a show for us. Now the show will be on my left-hand side, or the port side, if you're into the boating terms. So anybody on the right-hand side, if you want the boat to stop, you feel you want to stand up, or if you want to put your kids on the seat so they can actually see the show, that's great. Because we will remain here while the show's on, and then we'll continue on with our journey.
No one knows for certain quite how or why it happened, but around 2 billion years ago, in a warm, shallow pool, a tiny single-celled creature developed. A creature that could divide and reproduce itself, and change to meet the challenges of its harsh environment. A creature that was destined to change the face of the earth and become the father and mother of all life on the planet. Billions of years later, the Dudley Canal was a shallow tropical sea, and from that single-celled creature had evolved a wide variety of life forms: trilobites, shellfish, sea lilies, and giant corals. Welcome to Silurian times, when the rock around you was a living world 400 million years ago. As these creatures died, their remains sank to the bottom of the sea and were entombed in the mud. A steady rain that went on for millions of years. As later deposits were laid down, this mud was eventually compressed to form rock, still bearing the imprints of those creatures that lived and died millions of years before. We know this rock today as limestone, those imprints as fossils. The climate changed, and the age of the trilobites came to an end. The tropical sea was replaced by shallow swamps. Huge trees and ferns colonized the land. Animals followed: insects, scorpions, lizards, and giant dragonflies.
Now.
When they died, their remains sank into the mud and were in turn recorded in the layers of fossilized plant material, which eventually became coal. Many seams of coal were laid down, giving the geological period its name, the Carboniferous. The coal, interspersed with deposits of iron ore, was eventually covered by later rocks and sank many hundreds of feet below the surface. Folding and fracturing of the Earth's crust pushed the deposits of coal and limestone up through the later rocks, and wind and rain over millions of years eroded away these later deposits, leaving Dudley Castle Hill and the nearby Wren's Nest Hill standing proud as we see them today. These hills, with their thick coating of vegetation, remained largely undisturbed as life and eventually man evolved around them. Undisturbed, that is, until human technology took a sudden, dramatic turn. The Industrial Revolution. A revolution driven, engineered, and supported by iron. And iron's production required iron ore, coal to fire a furnace, and limestone as a flux to remove the impurities. Hundreds of millions of years of geology came together to make the Dudley area central to iron production and vital to the Industrial Revolution. Initially, the limestone was quarried from the sides of the hill, and as those deposits were exhausted, deep pits were dug as the miners followed the seams. As they went deeper, it became ever more difficult to raise the stone to the surface. The solution to this problem came in 1778, when the Earl of Dudley, who owned the mines, constructed a canal and tunnel into the hill to connect his mines to the Birmingham-Wolverhampton Canal and so to the rapidly expanding network of inland waterways. The tunnel was later extended through the hill, serving the mineral-rich lands on the other side of the ridge and linking the backcountry industries to the river Severn. Where the tunnel crossed the limestone beds, the rock was mined. Vertical shafts were dug to reach the deeper seams. Branch canals, tramways, and loading doors were constructed, and the stone brought out by boat to feed the furnaces of the black. Huge cannons were created with pick and shovel and gunpowder. Massive pillars of rock left behind to support the roof. In a few moments we will enter one of those caverns. Above us, the surface, 80 feet below us, and now flooded, lie yet more man-made caverns. Today, the tramways are silent, and the limestone roads are gone. But let us spare a thought for the black country miners who carved out these caverns 200 years ago. Danger was their constant companion, and not all returned alive to the surface.
Okay, that gives a bit of an explanation of more about how this all came about. Just so you get an idea of context, behind the screen was one of the largest caverns. It was called Dark Cavern, and it's that big actually St Paul's Cathedral would have been able to easily slide down the centre of it. What you also have to remember is some of the mines are actually below us. The actual canal we're on is actually lined so it doesn't leak water below. So what they simply did was pump out the water because it was below the water level, and then they could carry on mining and keep it relatively dry. Now I'm going to keep the lights off for a little bit, so I need to keep your eyes accustomed to the darkness. What you can see is these lights on the right-hand side, and those are the kind of lighting that the miners would have had, and that obviously would have been candlelight. And around each of the lights, you would have had about 4 or 5 miners working away with pickaxe and shovels, and they simply would have got it to one of the vertical shafts, or in fact to the canal, so that the rock and the quarry could be taken away and processed. Now there's 2 sections we're going to look to now, and I'm going to put the lights on momentarily for the first section, okay? And that's just so if you want to take photographs and have a good look at it. Now what is the calcite, the pure white calcite, and on the left-hand side there's a big groove in the rock, and that's where there's a natural fault in the rock. What I'm going to do is there's a very simple section coming up in front of us, and also you can see the stalactites above us. Now the next section, I'm going to take the lights off, so we're going to take the flash photography, and also after that section we are going to enter one of the largest caverns we're actually able to show you today, called Limestone Caverns. Limestone Cavern is the largest one we've ever shared on the 45-minute trip. It recently was about half a mile long, and once we enter Limestone Cavern, there's some more information that will be given to you. As we're going now, I'm going to go quiet again. There is a bit of a show, and the show's going to go all around you as well. Okay? So what we'll do, as we enter Limestone Cavern, I'll return to the left. It comes there, by the way, because it's like a whistling sound, a singing sound that used to happen because of the wind passing through there, and the miners just call it a local nickname of Limestone Cavern.
Those words were spoken in 1849 by the eminent geologist Sir Roderick Murchison in an address to the British Association for the Advancement of Science, who were gathered here in the limestone mines of Dudley. 200 years ago, a great debate raged upon the age and origin of the Earth, not only from a philosophical point of view, but from economic necessity. Canal building, mining, quarrying, and well sinking all demanded a knowledge of the local geology. The excavation of canal cuttings and mines provided men of science with a unique opportunity to study the layers of rock and their relationship to each other. The Dudley limestone has played a major role in the development of the science of geology. And even today, these mines and quarries are known internationally for the diversity and quality of the fossils that they have yielded. Dudley was one of the earliest iron-making centres, and by 1850, many of the limestone mines were worked out. The vast caverns left behind became a public attraction, not only for local people, but for learned societies and visiting dignitaries from abroad. The Earl of Dudley, who owned the mines, laid out plans and installed gas flares for illumination. A bandstand was built, and over the next few years, Many fetes and concerts were held in these mines, with entertainment provided by orchestras and military bands, choirs and magic lantern shows. Coloured flares were ignited and demonstrations of blasting carried out. Those events were perhaps a forerunner of today's classical spectacular concerts. Although some of the mines were accessible from the surface, many visitors came by canal boat, just as you have today. If we forget for a moment our modern electric motor and fluorescent lights, we are not so different from those audiences who sat here over 100 years ago, marvelling at the surroundings as the concert reached its spectacular conclusion.
Explain some of the features of Singing Cavern. Firstly, as you see, I'm shining the light just to the left and front of the boat, and you see the 4-inch layers of rock, the strata of rock. That's the high quality limestone. In fact, they were here to mine. And right above it, you can see they couldn't take it all, so they had to leave some of it to hold the roof up. Now that one pillar is about 400 tons, and in actually this area at the moment, we can actually see 5 pillows. However, as I say, originally Singing Mine was really half a mile long, and there would have been 20 of those pillars. However, the canal didn't go all the way along. It only went another 100 or so yards. The bandstand they're talking about, that's still there, and you can see the old-fashioned lighting in front of it. We still use that today, and they do use it for shows, but more importantly, we also use it for weddings. We carry about 8 or 9 weddings a year here. Okay, as we come into this tunnel, this is actually the 84 tunnel, and that's when it was constructed. And then earlier I explained about the modern method of construction. This is what it is in its raw form, and that's cast concrete in these sections, and they're simply bolted together. In fact, this is the method used now for things like the Channel Tunnel, and in fact all the underground systems underneath all our cities here in the UK and abroad. Now, when this section of tunnel was built, they hadn't actually built an underground tunnel like this for some period of time. And so, as you can imagine, it got a lot of press interest. It also got the interest of the TV company. And some of the kids, and maybe some of the adults were in a bit as well. The TV company was in fact called Blue Peter. So I am the famous keeper of a Blue Peter badge. Yes! Well, actually, I've got 2. Because the first one, they gave it to us, but they hadn't in fact flooded it ready for the boats. So unfortunately, the first one's about 2 foot under the water level. And that's right in the corner, and it is visible today, and a bit of a white gloss, about 2 foot under the water on the right-hand side. And the latest one's a yellow one, and they came back and gave us another one, once they realised we couldn't see the first one. Guys, you can look right up now as you come out the tunnel, and that's what it looks like. It's a bit at the bottom of a well. And I'm sure we've all looked down a well for many years, but actually now you can get to look up one. Now any change that comes down, of course, is my pension fund. Okay? Just to give you an idea where you are now, the tunnel to the right-hand side, I've lit up there now, that goes all the way to the rest of Dudley, in fact to the Dudley Castle and Dudley Zoo, and goes all the way to the Limestone Canal. But more importantly, it goes to a place called Merry Hill. Now it's really useful for me, because when I've got to do the shopping, I can go and take the boat up there, do my shopping, of course I get free parking. The reason it goes to Mary Hill was actually built on the site of an old steelworks called Round Oaks, and in fact it was originally an ironworks opened in 1850 by the Earl of Dudley. So clearly he used the canal to take his raw materials to the foundries. Right, on the right-hand side, we've got a bit of a display of the way the miners would have worked. Now, there's always something interesting with the mine. There's always an unlucky job. And the unlucky job in this case is a guy on the ladder. And he's holding that steel bar, that metal bar. Now, the problem with that, of course, is what his job was to do was to ram home the black powder, or gunpowder, as we call it nowadays, with a metal bar, an iron bar. Now, clearly, if you ram iron through rock, you get the odd spark. So unfortunately, there's a lot of people in that job. Unfortunately, there were a lot of premature explosions, and it wasn't exactly the job of choice. Now, of course, they could have used a copper bar, but copper was even expensive back in the 1770s, and they all decided it was easy to lose a few miners and pay for the copper. This is actually called Hurst Cavern. Now, Hurst Cavern was, in fact, one of the last mines to be mined in this section, and it was last mined in 1924, and unfortunately about 50 foot from where we stand now, on the very last day, the very last shift, there was a rockfall and 2 of the miners lost their lives. And I think it's a grim reminder, everything we see today is actually paid for by the Black Country miners and their families. Guys, I'm just going to go with the lights off in a moment. That's for anybody with cameras, anybody who wants to have a look. The next feature is above me, and it's a vertical shaft. The shaft would go all the way to the surface. It's not been brick lined, so it's stone lined, against original the rock lined. And because of that, the calcite's built up over many years, and in fact makes a very interesting view.
It's all right.
By the way, the skippers, we've got another nickname for it, and that's the one eye, because every time you look, one eye gets covered in water. Okay, things have changed again now. We've got a natural rock roof, so these bricks aren't for support, but we've got vertical brick walls, and that's because we're actually in an underground lock system. And obviously the original wooden parts of the lock have been removed, and simply this was put in to stop the flow of water. Because where we are, Dudley is the highest point in the area, so that every other canal is down from where we are now. So from here all the locks go down. So of course they had to stop the flow of water from some of the locks, so they put this underground lock system in. about to enter an open area, so my voice is going to get a bit strange and weird, simply because of the echoing. And what it is, this place is called Cathedral Arch. Now, as we go through, if you look towards the front of the boat, and you'll understand why we call it Cathedral Arch.
After the tunnel.
Boats that are seen on the left-hand side, now that there is giving you an idea of the kind of working boat that would have actually worked here. Now that boat was actually built in the 1930s and was never used in our mines, but it is the kind of shape and size that the original wooden boats would have been, and each of those boats would have held about 30 or 40 tons of rock. And around here it's mostly limestone, occasionally it'll be coal. Now, as you look round at Cathedral Arch, just to give you an idea, we've been told there's about 9 million bricks here. Guys, you're going to have your attention at the back of the boat for a moment. Basically, this is the implement that used to be used to move the boat. It's quite simple. They jam it to the side of the wall and push the boat along. It's now called a boating hook. So anybody's into boating now, that's what they'll call it. Its actual true name was a barge pole. And this is the famous barge pole I wouldn't touch you with. I did suddenly get better. Now also, the word barge is into our language as forcing your way through, forcing past. Now the problem, you'll see right on the lip here as we come out the tunnel, there's it creates an awful lot of damage to the brickwork and the mortar between the bricks. So this practice was banned by the law, because of course he didn't want to have to repatent it to do his brickwork. So this practice was banned, and they later came up with a new version, which I'll explain in a moment. As we go through this area is called shale rock, and it's shale just